The world watched, holding its breath as news broke. The United States had launched targeted military strikes against key Iranian facilities. Washington called it a preemptive measure to neutralize imminent threats, presenting evidence and framing the operation as self-defense. This direct strike on Iranian soil crossed a red line, raising fears of a wider conflict. For years, US-Iran tensions simmered through sanctions, cyber attacks, and proxy wars, but never open confrontation. The global community braced for Iran's response, but what followed was even more unexpected: a seismic shift in the Arab world. The old narrative, Sunni Arab states versus Shia Iran, with America as the security guarantor, was suddenly upended. Instead of support, Washington's Arab allies responded with shock and condemnation. The silence from traditional partners was deafening, soon replaced by statements that stunned Western observers. The carefully constructed anti-Iran front appeared to crumble overnight. Rather than isolating Tehran, the strikes forced Arab nations to reconsider their alliances and security strategies. The unthinkable had happened, not just in Iran's skies but in the halls of power from Riyadh to Abu Dhabi. The region and the world was entering uncharted territory. Old alliances were shaken, and a new Middle East was awakening. The consequences would be felt far beyond the battlefield. The first shock came from Riyadh. Saudi Arabia condemned the US strikes as a dangerous violation of sovereignty. This was a dramatic break from the past, as the kingdom had long been Iran's chief regional rival. Soon the UAE, Egypt, and Qatar echoed the condemnation, calling for restraint and dialogue. These nations, often divided by their own disputes, now spoke with one voice. Their message was clear: the era of unconditional reliance on American security was over. Arab leaders refused to be drawn into a direct conflict with Iran, prioritizing regional stability over US objectives. The strikes had inadvertently united the Arab world against American unilateralism. This shift reflected a growing weariness with being caught in the US-Iran rivalry, and a pragmatic recognition of Iran's proximity and power. If war erupted, cities like Dubai and Riyadh would be on the front lines. The Arab world was choosing self-preservation, sending a message: our region will not be your battlefield. This collective pivot marks a fundamental realignment of power and priorities in the Middle East. The old playbook no longer applies. A new era of agency and independence had begun. To grasp the magnitude of Saudi Arabia's defense of Iran, consider their bitter history: decades of rivalry, proxy wars, and sectarian strife. Yet, the 2019 attacks on Saudi oil facilities, blamed on Iran, exposed the limits of American protection. Riyadh realized its economic ambitions depended on regional stability, not endless confrontation. In 2023, China brokered a deal restoring Saudi-Iranian diplomatic ties, a fragile but significant step. The US strikes accelerated this rapprochement, as both nations saw stability as a shared interest. Today's cooperation is pragmatic, not friendly, but it's a recognition that war would be disastrous for both. The Saudi condemnation of the US is a public affirmation of this new reality. Riyadh now sees its security better served by managing tensions with Iran than by relying on unpredictable American actions. The ground beneath the Middle East is shifting. Amid the outcry, one US ally stayed silent: Jordan. No condemnation, no support, just careful quiet. Jordan's position is precarious, balancing deep US ties with the realities of its neighborhood. Dependent on American aid, Amman cannot afford to alienate Washington. Yet, with Iranian-backed militias nearby and a large, sympathetic Palestinian population, open support for the US could spark unrest. Jordan's silence is strategic, a way to avoid taking sides in a conflict where it stands to lose either way. By saying nothing, Amman hopes to maintain vital alliances and domestic stability. This ambiguity is a survival tactic in a region where every word carries risk. Jordan walks a tightrope, navigating between powerful patrons and volatile neighbors. Its silence speaks volumes about the pressures facing smaller states in the Middle East. Why this dramatic shift? It's not emotion, it's cold calculation. First, Arab leaders increasingly doubt America's reliability, recalling Syria's red line and the Afghanistan withdrawal. They fear being abandoned or dragged into conflicts serving US interests. Second, Iran's resilience is undeniable. Decades of pressure haven't curbed its influence. Geography makes Iran an inescapable neighbor, prompting a shift from confrontation to diplomacy. Third, China's role as a broker offers Arab states alternatives to US-led diplomacy, reducing dependency on Washington. Now, Arab leaders seek to control their own destiny, tired of foreign intervention and proxy wars. By condemning the US and engaging Iran, they assert agency and demand regional solutions. The future of the Middle East, they signal, should be decided in Riyadh, Abu Dhabi, and Tehran, not Washington. It's a risky strategy, but one they see as essential for survival. The old order is fading, a new calculus is taking shape. This realignment is rooted in history. Memories of colonialism and foreign intervention run deep. US strikes on Iran revived old grievances, seen as another chapter of Western powers imposing their will. Even anti-Iranian governments rallied against the US, defending the principle of sovereignty. Today's condemnation is a warning. An attack on one could be a precedent for attacks on others. The Iraq War looms large. Launched to neutralize a threat, it instead destabilized the region and expanded Iranian influence. Arab leaders have learned American military actions can have catastrophic consequences. Their pivot to diplomacy is a direct response to the chaos of past interventions. Now, they seek a new regional order, less dependent on outsiders, more focused on integration and shared interests. Deep rivalries remain, but the unified reaction to the US strikes signals a fundamental re-evaluation. The past is being reconsidered and a different future is cautiously imagined. The Arab world's support for Iran marks a watershed moment, signaling the possible end of decades of American dominance and rigid divides. The region's future is now more uncertain, but also more in the hands of its own leaders. This agency brings both promise and peril. Diplomacy between rivals like Saudi Arabia and Iran could foster stability and economic cooperation. A Middle East focused on development, not conflict, would have global benefits. But the landscape is fragile. Old animosities and the risk of miscalculation remain. A reduced US role could create a power vacuum, tempting regional actors to compete more aggressively. The Arab world is demanding a new relationship with the US partnership, not patronage. They are also embarking on a risky path of engagement with their greatest rival. Whether this leads to cooperation or renewed conflict will define the region for generations. The world watches as the Middle East navigates this pivotal moment. The stakes have never been higher.